So today we're going to be having a look at my Brompton P Line, which I bought this last year around July time, and since then I've been using it quite a bit. I went on holiday to Sardinia, for example, and I cycled. I've cycled across the country and used it for a variety of places and things. And one particular area that I've really struggled to kind of find some information on is upgrading the chain rings, upgrading the cassette, and just this system in general. And as I just mentioned a moment ago, when I was in Sardinia, I was cycling up some around sort of 10 to 15% hills, and I was doing this with a standard chainring on this bike, and it was nearly impossible. So there's a couple of things that I've changed on this which people might find interesting. Firstly, I'm using this little thing here, which is basically it's known as I think it's the Schlumpf Speed drive, or in this case I'm using something called the ATS Speed drive, which is basically a variant of it. And what you can actually do is you buy it and you get a 34 tooth chainring on the front rather than the usual sort of 48, 50 or 52. And then what you can do is this has got an actual gearing system inside of it, so it uses these little planetary gears which are stored just in this little mechanism here. And then what you're doing as you're cycling, you kick it with your heel, and that engages the different drives. So on this side you get the equivalent of, if you're running 34 on the front, you get the equivalent of about a 56, and in my case I'm running a 38, so I get the equivalent of about, I think it's around a 60 or a 62. And what this gives you is the ability to kind of upgrade your group set without having to have all the cables and derailleurs, so it's kind of perfect for Brompton. The main disadvantage is it does stick out a little bit here, so it comes out a little bit further. And I'll just show you, I'll overlay it on this video, but you can actually see where I've folded it in and it actually gets stuck inside of the actual mudguard stay. So this is a really useful little thing, and what it means is I can use a much smaller chain set on the front here, so I get some climbing gears, but at the same time I can kick it up and it will engage, and it will give me effectively a much higher top speed as well. So you kind of get the best of both worlds without having to have all the mess. And I'll show you in just a moment about kind of shifting and that sort of thing. The next little thing that I've changed on my bike is actually the cassette at the back here, and by default Bromptons come with I think it's a 17 or an 18 tooth maximum on here, and what I've done is you see these two top cassette links here, I've actually upgraded those, so I'm using a 21 and I think an 18 or a 19 here. I'll double check that in a moment. But effectively what that gives me, it means I can get a much wider range. Obviously you get larger gear jumps between your shifts. However, what it means is I can run a large chainring up front and still have my climbing, or I can extend the climbing ability. And this is, you can spend about £15 on effectively a chainring off eBay. It's a 10. I mean, the P lines use a 10-speed equivalent, so you have to match it to that. And in this case, I just purchased a set off eBay. You unscrew it, and then effectively you use the relevant chain rings that you need. So you clean it all up and you just install them together. And what I'll do in this video in the moment is I'm going to be modifying this second link up here, basically because I want to make my gearing a little bit more efficient, and I keep finding that I'm having too much of a jump between this and this, so I'm going to be making that one a little bit larger, and I'll go through that process in this video. And this is just kind of to share my experiences of that, and how to effectively do this upgrade in general, really. But the main thing is you'll need a couple of cassette rings which you buy off eBay. It'll come with the relevant spacers, of which you don't actually need to change them, but I'll show you the ones that you do modify. And then obviously you'll need a new chain as part of this, because as part of this upgrade you're effectively going to be making this gap obviously much larger. So the next step in this upgrade cycle really is to look at the different cassette sizes. So here what I've got is effectively the two original chain rings from the P line, which I took off to do the previous upgrade. Then here is the 10-speed cassette that I've butchered. And the only real difference, the only thing I've done to this is it comes with 4 screws, which I think they go through the back if I remember correctly. They go straight through, and you just unscrew them with a Torx screw, and then you effectively butcher and steal the relevant ones you need. So in my case, I'm looking to take the 15 tooth, which I think is this one here. So I'll be taking this, installing onto the Brompton instead of effectively the stock one, which I can't remember what it is. It might be a 13 or a 12. Then additionally, what we've got here is the chain rings up front I was experimenting with. So you can see here, I've upgraded from kind of the standard one that the ATS drive came with, which is actually quite fragile, and in my case, wasn't very good. So what I've actually done is I've bought a mountain bike narrow wide version, which means that the chain stays on much better, and this is a really nice Hulk one. It's a lot more solid. In this case, this is a 34 tooth, and as I said before, I'm using the 38 tooth on the bike at the moment. So now I've just got the bike in a stand to aid us with this a little bit. I'm just going to quickly clean up the chain a little bit with a dirty rag and some degreaser down there. Then I'm going to remove it, and then I'm going to start pulling off the wheels and all the bits so we can crack on. So as we can now see, we've got the wheel off here, and we can see the cassette, and it's obviously a little bit skanky here, so I'll just be cleaning that up. And then we'll remove the lock ring, and then we'll be replacing the second one in here. So my original plan to replace this with a 15 tooth is not going to work due to the nature of these rings and the spacers. So what I'm actually going to do instead is the previous 17 tooth ring, which we had just there. So we had, and this is useful for if you're doing this, if you're changing your cassette. Effectively, you've got your main, on the actual chain ring, you've got the spacer, which comes with the Brompton. Then on top of that, excuse me, just doing this one-handed is a little bit tricky. Then on top of that, you've obviously got your big ring. Then we've got our spacer, which sits on top of there. Then I'm going to put the 15 tooth. Then I'm going to put the 13 and the 10 back on just on top there, and they come with effects for their own integrated spacers for that. So let's see how this goes. So here we are now with the 15 tooth installed instead of the 17 tooth. So got 3 fairly close together, and then a pretty jump for when we need the hill, pretty large jump for when we need to climb hills and things like that. And the main reason we're doing this is because when I'm in my higher gear on this one, I quite often sit here, and it's just a little bit too hard, and I need to drop it down a little bit. So this 15 tooth is really key to making all the gears kind of sit nicely in the right place. So let's get this back together and see how it is. So now I've got the cassette fully reinstalled with the new cassette sprocket on, and it's obviously back on the wheel, cleaned up a little bit, and then I've just kind of cleaned up the derailleur whilst I was here, and sprayed some GT80 to get it in the links. So now we have the next job, which is effectively, when I fold this Brompton up, as I said before, the mudguard stay gets stuck in this because it sticks out further. So I believe if we remove this guard here, it will give us that little bit of space we need to hopefully not get stuck. Or alternatively, maybe I'll purchase a slightly smaller one of these with a smaller diameter, and maybe that won't get stuck either. But for now, what I'll do is I'll just try simply removing it, and we'll see how we get on. So now we've got it all back together. We've lost our chain guard. We've obviously got the new bit on it. It's shifting well. All seems to be pretty good. So hopefully we'll see how this gets on.